Hello Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we are going to be talking about last night's game against the Utah Jazz. But before we do that, we've got to talk about the elephant in the room, the very real possibility, and also the likely probability that the Toronto Raptors are going to make the NBA play-in tournament. This is not a video that I really want to make because, quite honestly, I think that the Toronto Raptors don't have a ton to play for this year. If they could just sim to the end of the season and remain in the same spot that they are right now, which is, fifth in terms of record from the bottom, they would probably have the best future outlook for their team. They would be able to come back next season, activate Brandon Ingram, have a top pick ready to develop, and they'd be ready to go and start winning basketball games. They could, make the playoffs next season, and I would be completely over the moon about it. Unfortunately, there are some major factors working against them, which I am going to get into today, and I'm going to explain why, although they have a kind of pretty bad record right now, and as I mentioned, are fifth from the bottom, they have a very, very good chance of making the play-in tournament, even if they try to tank and lose the remaining games. So let's jump into it. So first of all, the Toronto Raptors have the easiest remaining strength of schedule of any team in the league, and it's not particularly close. I mentioned this in the last video, but it bears repeating. The Toronto Raptors have a 36% remaining strength of schedule, which means that the teams that they face, if you averaged out their records, the teams they're facing have only won collectively 36% of their games. The next worst on that list are the Atlanta Hawks, who have a 43% remaining strength of schedule. So their remaining strength of schedule is 7 percentage points easier than the next team. That is absolutely crazy. In fact, one of the teams that they are facing that is supposedly one of the best teams that they will face are the Dallas Mavericks. And we have all seen really what's happened to them. First of all, they traded away Luka Doncic, which, was a catastrophic mistake, for Anthony Davis, who is now out for the season. And just yesterday, it was announced that Kyrie Irving, his knee injury, has put him out for the season as well. So they're not even a good team. And then when you look at the remaining strength of schedule, like 36% almost seems a bit charitable. It sounds harder than I think it actually will be. So if you were to take a look at the remaining schedule, the next two games are the Washington Wizards at home, followed by the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid is out for the full season, and they have looked absolutely terrible. Then they play the Utah Jazz. The game after that is pretty difficult. I mean, Portland has been competent this season. They are one of the best of the worst, I would say, and they're playing them in their building, followed by the Phoenix Suns, who have looked, dreadful in their building. Then probably the most difficult game of the remaining schedule, Golden State in their building. And that's really what I would say is the only kind of very good chance at a loss that they have. Then after that, they play the San Antonio Spurs at home, Wemby out for the season, Washington Wizards again in their building, Brooklyn Nets in their building, Charlotte Hornets at home, Philadelphia 76ers in their building, Chicago Bulls in their building. That one might be a little difficult. Portland Trailblazers at home, Detroit Pistons at home. They are another team that has been good this season, so that is another difficult game. Brooklyn Nets in their building, Charlotte Hornets at home, Dallas Mavericks, as I mentioned, huge issues with their team in their building, and then San Antonio Spurs in their building. The Toronto Raptors could conceivably win 80% of these games, and it's not even, hard to imagine. Some of these teams are going to be difficult to lose to, even if they tried. The Washington Wizards at home, the Toronto Raptors would probably have to rest most of their good players. If Scottie Barnes or Emmanuel Quickley or RJ Barrett play in those games, they would be the best player in those games, and they would probably win those games, even if they have, some of the role players, some of the 10-day guys playing major minutes. We saw it yesterday, the Utah Jazz, the Raptors played tons of 10-day guys, but because they had Scottie Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley, they just easily beat the Utah Jazz. So This is an extremely easy remaining strength of schedule. And so what I've done is I've laid out who the Toronto Raptors are kind of competing against, both in terms of the tank, but more importantly, who the teams are above them in the Eastern Conference, and how likely is it for the Toronto Raptors to make the play-in tournament. So right now, the play-in spots are occupied by Miami at 7, Atlanta at 8, Orlando at 9, and Chicago at 10. And as you can see, the Toronto Raptors, out of any team, below 6. So any of the teams that could potentially vie for the play-in tournament, they have the best record in the past 10, and they also have some distinct advantages going into the remaining 20 games of the season. So let's look at some of the additions and subtractions that every team has made within this range. So first of all, we'll discuss Charlotte very briefly. They have 14 wins on the season, and they are 1-9 in their past 10 games. The Toronto Raptors are not catching them. It's not going to happen. They are terrible. They have major injuries, and people are out, and they're sitting guys. They are tanking. It's over. They are not going to move below them. Pretty much the only available direction for the Raptors to go is either flat, staying where they are, or going up. And as you can see, it's a three-way tie almost. In terms of wins, it's a three-way tie. The Toronto Raptors have one more loss than the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets. So what happened recently, about a month and a bit ago, Emmanuel Quickley has returned from injury, and also Jakob Poeltl was sidelined for a bit, but he is back. He honestly, I think, was available for last game, but they sat him. I think he's just sitting in terms of for tanking purposes. Grady Dick is also out. Okay, so he is a real injury. He got demolished by Cole Anthony, and RJ Barrett kind of combo slammed into him, and he is all banged up. They say his knee is the more pressing issue, but he also got bonked in the head as well. He is going to be out for at least another 2 weeks. That's when they're going to reevaluate him. But then after that, there are various players who are bouncing in and out of the lineup pretty much because of the tank. And they have Brandon Ingram as well. I don't know how healthy he is. I think that he probably would be available for the playoffs, but again, I don't know. But the rest of the players are kind of bouncing in and out because of the tank. Above them, the Philadelphia 76ers are 1-9 in their past 10 games. Fortunately for the Toronto Raptors, they have acquired a guy by the name of Quentin Grimes. And Quentin Grimes, he is him. Scottie Barnes famously, confronted Quentin Grimes when there was a kerfuffle when they were playing against the New York Knicks a few years ago, and he famously pointed at him and said, "You is not him." But Quentin Grimes is really kind of making a case for himself, and he has been a huge addition for them. He is like their leading scorer over the past couple of games, and he's looked really good. I mean, the creation ability that he has is something that I don't think many people really expected. But for them, Joel Embiid is out for the season. Jared McCain's out for the season. They've been absolutely horrible. They're 1 win, 9 losses. Paul George has been atrocious. Tyrese Maxey is playing injured, but he hasn't been able to really help them win just because of that. They've looked awful, and it looks like the Toronto Raptors are going to pass them in the standings. Brooklyn, Cam Thomas recently returned from injury. Cam Johnson is day-to-day, probably with a tanking injury. His knee is sore, apparently. And Dennis Schroeder, who's playing really well for them, was traded to the Golden State Warriors, so he's no longer on the team. And they also received D'Angelo Russell. They have been bad. They are 3 wins, 7 losses, although I don't think that they are as catastrophically bad as some of the other teams. So they may keep pace with the Raptors, and they could also make the play-in this year. The Brooklyn Nets also 50% remaining strength of schedule. Next up, the Chicago Bulls. They are also 3-7 in their past 10 games. Zach LaVine is gone. They traded him. They have a whole bunch of players that are kind of sitting, I think, for tank purposes. They got Kevin Huerter and Zach Collins, and they've been pretty good for them. Basically, they are, a young, not a very good offensive team, not a great defensive team. I think that the Toronto Raptors could conceivably and probably are likely to pass them. I would just say if the Toronto Raptors didn't completely tank the season, I think that they would probably pass the Chicago Bulls. And as you can see, their remaining strength of schedule is around 50%. And so I think that the Raptors have a good chance of passing them. Orlando. Okay, Orlando. Nobody really predicted this, that Orlando would be as bad as they have been over the past, the second half of the season. So the guys they're missing are Mo Wagner and Jalen Suggs. Both are good defensive players. In the case of Jalen Suggs, he is one of the best guard defenders in the league, and he's a playmaker. And he was a competent catch-and-shoot player that made their offense a little bit better. But defensively, he was a huge reason for their success. Mo Wagner, very good backup. On the plus side, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner both returned from injury. But they have been bad. I mean, the Raptors just beat them in their building. The Bulls just beat them as well. Their offense is horrible. I mean, they can't score. Other than their top two guys, they just really don't have anybody who could make a shot or really, stretch a defense or bend a defense or create or do any of that stuff. They really don't have anybody on offense, and they have a 50% strength of schedule. So that leaves the other two teams. There's a three-way tie in terms of wins with Orlando, Atlanta, and Miami. Atlanta is a team that has something working for them and something working against them. So working for them, let's say that they are trying to make the play-in, they have a really easy remaining strength of schedule. As I mentioned, they have the second easiest remaining strength of schedule with a 43% win percentage for their opponents for the remainder of their games. They have gone 4-6 over their past 10. They have a number of big things that have happened to them. Jalen Johnson, probably their second best player, is out for the season. Bogdan Bogdanovic, he was traded. They got Terrence Mann back, who has been pretty good, and they acquired Karis LeVert for DeAndre Hunter. And I think that's a step back for them. DeAndre Hunter was having a great season, and Karis LeVert has been on and off the injury list. I think that they're taking it easy with him, but I think that was a step back for them. So they've lost some big guys on their team, and it doesn't look like they're trying to win. So I could easily see the Toronto Raptors, they're 8 games back of the Atlanta Hawks, but I think that it is definitely within the realm of possibility with the strength of schedule and with, their personnel. If they don't literally hold out most of the players on their team, they will be better than the Hawks. And so it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could catch the Atlanta Hawks. But they don't even have to catch the Atlanta Hawks. All they have to do is catch the Bulls and pass the Bulls, and they will be in the play-in. Finally, for completion's sake, we'll talk about Miami. Miami has a relatively easy remaining strength of schedule of 46%. They also have a couple of roster changes. Jimmy Butler was traded. Nikola Jovic is out for the season. But in the Jimmy Butler trade, they got 2 guys that have been pretty good for them. Andrew Wiggins, who is just a good two-way player, and Davion Mitchell, who was a solid role player for the Raptors. But of course, once he's joined the Miami Heat, they have sprinkled magical fairy dust on him, or more likely, sacrificed a couple of goats in some kind of evil ritual. And now he's shooting 48% from 3, which was one of his biggest weaknesses as a Raptor. So he has been very good for them. And they are at 29 wins and 33 losses. And they have good players. Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Andrew Wiggins, Davion Mitchell. I don't think that they're going to catch Miami. I think Miami might even make the playoffs. So anyway, yeah, the Toronto Raptors are in a bad way right now. They are stuck in no man's land in terms of where they're going to be picking in the draft, because I think, honestly, there is a very good chance that they will make the play-in tournament. And yeah, I'm sure that many people, it'll be exciting, that they'll be excited to watch the Raptors play a meaningful basketball game this year. Unfortunately, this is an extremely good draft class. That's really what it is. I wasn't very disappointed last season when they lost their pick, because that draft was just not very good. However, this season is a different story. If they are near the top of this year's draft, they will be getting a difference maker or a guy with extremely high upside. So this is a tough pill to swallow. Anyhow, I wanted to show you guys what the Raptors were dealing with and how it could all shake out in the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference being absolutely terrible is a curse for the Toronto Raptors this season. It looks like everybody is kind of gearing themselves towards the draft, and the Raptors are in a bad way. But that kind of dovetails pretty nicely to the game last night, and it was against the Utah Jazz. And why don't we just jump right into the player evaluations. We will start off with the top guy, Immanuel Quickley. And Immanuel Quickley had a really excellent game, 34 points on 20 shots, very efficient. He was 6 of 13 from 3, 8 of 8 from the free throw line, with 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 0 blocks, 1 turnover, probably his best game of the season, pretty easily. His shot was going in. He was showing off all of his moves, going to the basket, setting up teammates. It was really showing kind of what he can do from a scoring perspective, because I think that is his best quality as a guard, is his ability to fill it up from beyond the arc, score in a variety of ways. He can play on the ball, he can play off the ball. He was on fire. He was playing good defense. He was responsible for a number of Utah Jazz turnovers. He was just excellent, in a class above pretty much anybody else on the Utah Jazz. Next up, we'll go to Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes had 22 points on 19 shots. He was 0 of 3 from 3. He was 6 of 8 from the free throw line, with 12 rebounds, 2 steals, 3 blocks, and 3 turnovers, and his defense was like suffocating. He is an excellent defender, and unless it was like Walker Kessler, really, they really couldn't score on him around the basket. I suppose Kyle Filipowski had a pretty good game too, but everybody else was just like terrified to drive into the paint. Scottie Barnes was waiting there on a number of occasions to swat shots, and as you know, he has great foot speed for like a forward big. He can move and patrol the paint and cut off penetration and, recover to the perimeter. He can move his feet if there's a switch. I mean, he just was dominant defensively. 6 assists as well. He's an excellent playmaker. He's just better than anybody else on the Jazz. Walker Kessler had a really good night, so maybe, Walker Kessler had a better night than Scottie, but Scottie Barnes is a better player than Walker Kessler, no doubt about it. But props to Walker Kessler, because he had an insane stat line. After that, we'll go to Jacoby Walter, who unfortunately had to leave the game with a quad strain. And strains they can be serious. It can be, if you do an examination, it could be something a little bit more serious, but I'm assuming he's day to day. But he had a great game, 14 points on 12 shots. He was 2 of 6 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, with 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 0 turnovers, and great defense. He is still an excellent defender. One thing I really like about him is his aggressiveness going to the basket. He does not shy away from contact. He is going into the body of the defender, trying to draw fouls. And once he's not a rookie anymore and he gets a more favorable whistle, that is really going to help him. And I think that he is going to be, he's looking better and better and better as the season progresses. He has that baseline where he is a good defender. And it's easy to give this guy minutes. If you're a coach, you're looking at matchups and how you can defend another team's best perimeter player. Jacoby Walter is kind of the answer to that question. He can really do that kind of thing. And then on offense, he's developing. His shooting has been better recently. He is a smart cutter, good off-ball mover, and I think his aggressiveness and ability and willingness to handle the ball and go toward the basket is getting better, and his confidence is getting higher there every game. It's not good yet, let's be clear about that, but it is moving in the correct direction, in my opinion. I think that he has really shone and stood out as a rookie, and I think just based on his defense, him playing in lieu of Grady Dick has helped the Raptors. I think it really has, like a subpar defender with a good defender. And although Grady Dick is a better offensive player at this point, I don't think it's as great a chasm as, the defensive side of the ball, where Jacoby is just a lot better than Grady is defensively right now. Moving along, we'll go to Orlando Robinson, who did not have a good game. Walker Kessler kind of ate his lunch. Walker Kessler had an absurd stat line. We'll just mention it right now. 18 points on 11 shots. He was 2 of 7 from the free throw line, 13 offensive rebounds, 12 defensive rebounds for, do the math, 25 rebounds in total, 0 assists, 0 steals, 8 blocks, and 4 turnovers. So yeah, when you have that many offensive rebounds from your big, that is domination of the opposing big. Usually you can't look at just the stats of both bigs and say, well, this one had a better game, because usually when they're scoring, it's the result of the creation of someone else and it's a dump off, and a lot of the time that's not the fault of the defending center. However, when you see 13 offensive rebounds for a player in 33 minutes, somebody was not doing their job. So Orlando Robinson is one. He finished with 7 rebounds in 25 minutes, but it was a problem with everybody, but also with Orlando Robinson. And also his finishing has been, he does a lot of stuff that I enjoy. I think he's in the right position, and he's a good defender, and he can pass the ball, and he sets good screens. He was 3 of 10 from the field and had 7 points, and that's pretty hard to do. He did make a 3, so good for him. But on the inside, he couldn't score against Walker Kessler at all. He had a number of possessions where he would get the ball in the post, try to execute a post move, and Walker Kessler would either block his shot or just simply stand tall, and Orlando Robinson does not have the touch to make the shot. And that's really just what it is all about, honestly, at this point. When you have a guy who's like doing well in a lot of different categories, like, okay, like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, like that range, they'll look like a pretty good basketball player. However, if you have one skill where it's just like 0 out of 10 or 1 out of 10, it's going to drag everything down into the negatives, and that player isn't worth playing anymore. And I'm just feeling that way about his finishing ability. It's just not there. So he's not a good player, unfortunately. And I think the sample size has grown large enough that I'm pretty comfortable talking about him. We'll go to the bench real quick. Jamal Shead had a good game, 8 points on 9 shots. So again, his efficiency isn't really there. He was 0 of 4 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 2 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1 turnover. So his efficiency needs to get better, and his shot is very iffy, but I'm still kind of liking what I'm seeing, especially on the defensive end, and especially from the playmaking department. I think he does those things well. Jared Rhoden, he was kind of the surprise this game. He had 14 points on 4 of 10 shooting. He did a good job getting out in the break. He was aggressive going to the basket. He in fact went to the line 6 times. He was 1 of 3 from 3. 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers. So he had a pretty good game against a very bad Jazz team. Okay, so next up we've got Jamison Battle. Jamison Battle had a really good game. 11 points on 6 shots. He was 3 of 5 from 3. 1 rebound, 0 assists, 0 steals, 1 block, 0 turnovers. Jamison Battle did what he does, which is, hit open shots. And he's going to continue to be a guy that the Toronto Raptors can bring off of the bench to fill that role. And he does it well. He does it well. He is a good specialist. He is one of the only guys that the Toronto Raptors have picked up as a shooter who can actually consistently shoot. Like, they've picked up a lot of guys over the years where it's like, okay, this guy can come off the bench and hit shots, and almost all of them have just been a disaster from that standpoint. So Jamison Battle being able to shoot, hey, I'm pretty pleased with him. In any case, that was the game. Jakob Poeltl being out, obviously Walker Kessler is going to have a monster game. RJ Barrett also sat. They were both being rested. That was DNP rest. They were healthy to play, and they didn't. And the Raptors, it didn't matter. They were able to just smash the sort of shorthanded and also not good Utah Jazz. This is going to be something that you're going to be seeing. The Raptors are going to be resting their top guys, and it's not going to matter. They're going to be able to beat teams like Washington when they're playing at home. I would be very surprised if the Wizards were able to beat Toronto in either of the next 2 games. And there is one game happening tonight against the Wizards at 7:30, and I expect them to, wipe the floor with them. The Raptors organization, I don't think that they're willing to be as shameless as some of the other teams like the Utah Jazz, where they just hold out their good players and say, hit the bench. We're not playing you. We need to lose games. I think that the Raptors as an organization just have a bit too much class So I think you'll see probably Jakob Poeltl play in that game, maybe RJ Barrett. Maybe they rest Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel quickly, but even if they do, if they have RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, and then, if Jacoby's back and they've got some decent role players, I think they'll probably be able to beat the Wizards almost assuredly, unless they really hold everybody out. Anyhow, that is the episode. Let me know what you think. I know some of you are just sick of tanking. You don't want to see the Raptors lose games, and you're hoping they make the play-in. So give me your arguments why. Why do you think that the Raptors should, skip out on this draft class and make the play-in and, get demolished by the Celtics in the first round, even if they get into the actual playoffs? Let me know your justification for that. Or if you need to, you're kind of preaching to the choir here, but if you are for the Raptors tanking and just blatantly doing the tank thing, let me know in the comments here as well. And also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Raptors fans, love answering your questions, love hearing your comments. We really are the best fan base in the NBA, no question about it. And if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe, because it helps the channel grow, helps the algorithm put the content in front of Raptors fans such as yourself. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.